Zimbabwe's State Enterprises and Parastatals Minister Gorden Moyo says his country is ready to engage with and is ripe for investors. He says companies will find opportunities in the energy, transport and telecom sectors and assured investors that these would be protected through the new constitution. Mr. Moyo said the Movement for Democratic Change had a development plan centered on jobs, investment capital and empowerment to further normalize the situation in South Africa. He now joins us in the studio. Mr. Moyo, thank you so much for coming through to us here on Beyond Markets. Of course, the big question around investing in Zimbabwe is the question of political risk. We know that you've had hyperinflation, you've managed to stabilize, the situation, but you're not out of the woods yet. I spoke with your finance minister, Tendai Biti, yesterday, and he said that, you needed financial assistance, for example, to be able to run the referendum and hold the elections. If you're saying that you can constitutionally protect investors that come into Zimbabwe, what kind of risk is posed by the fact that you're perhaps not having the money to hold this referendum and the elections that is needed to normalize the situation as you've urged people to come to?
Thank you, Karima. There is a history to the problem in Zimbabwe. The history is that we have an inclusive government which has normalized the political situation and also stabilized the economy. Over the past 3.5 years, the economy grew up until 2011. 2012, the economy started stagnating or even deteriorating. And there is a need right now to make sure that we redirect the economy. And that need is urgent. Because a government is dry, its coffers are dry. A normal economy will have various methods of harnessing resources to the treasury. You will have FDIs, your foreign direct investments. You will have your overseas development assistance. You will have your export returns rather. You also have credit lines coming into the country. All that is not there in Zimbabwe at the moment. We rely solely on the taxpayer. And yet our tax base is even narrow because about 90% of the population, which is supposed to be employed, is not employed. In fact, it is in the informal sector. And we have not formalized the informal sector in order to get the resources. Mm-hmm. Hence, the finance minister was dead right when he said we need the resources for the referendum, we need the resources for the elections, we need the resources even to stabilize the deteriorating situation at the moment. So I totally agree with him. That's the reality which is glaring at us at the moment.
Now, of course, that reality is something that you can't, brush aside when you're speaking to investors. I understand that you were addressing investors at a Nedbank function today. What is your message to them, given the fact that you are in a position, or you are in a precarious position? You need the funds to stabilize the situation, but you also need to mitigate risk for people who come in, particularly viewed against the policy of indigenization.
Your question has got two dimensions. The first one, I must say to you that whilst we do have these difficulties, there is a demand in Zimbabwe, a demand in the energy sector that we get a joint venture, we get investors coming in, we get partners, suitors coming in. For example, we are currently producing slightly above 1,000 megawatts of our power, of our energy, against the demand of 5,000 megawatts. That demand has to be offsetted in one form or another. We will need investors to come in. Whether it is an MDC government that is going to take over, whether it is a ZANU-PF government that is going to be, that we will take over, we will definitely need the investors to come in. We agreed as government that currently we are unable to capitalize our various sectors, our energy sector, our transport sector, telecommunications. Therefore, there is a general and broad agreement by government to say, let's go out and invite investors, particularly to the public entities, state enterprises and parastatals, which is the portfolio that I'm running.
But
there is an issue.
How do you address their fears, though? Because if you come into state-owned enterprises, you're immediately talking about a public-private partnership. How do you make sure that investors are assured that their investments are safe and that the state won't seize it at some future point? Because that is the kind of noise that certainly comes from the ZANU part of your government.
I was going to respond to the second part of your question, which is about indigenization. I want to say, first and foremost, Indigenization and Empowerment Act is a good law. I must say that. It is a good law, which is unfortunately wrongly implemented. The problem is in the implementation. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything wrong with empowering the people of Zimbabwe to participate in the economy, to strengthen the people of Zimbabwe to contribute in the economy. There is nothing wrong with that. But there is everything wrong with taking, the shares from a rich foreign investor giving a rich black Zimbabwean. What we need is to grow the cake. Before you cut the cake into pieces, let's grow the cake. Mm-hmm. Let's make it big. And when you cut it for the people down there, for the grassroots, for the marginalized, for the women and the children down there, for the poor, and not for the rich. So the implementation right now is what is wrong. And a new government should deal with those matters, should reconceptualize, rethink, and reconsider the implementation of this law. Because the law itself is okay. What is wrong is the regulations that were put and the implementation of those regulations. And I don't agree with them. And the part of government in Zimbabwe, we have an inclusive government. There is a part of government which is against the implementation strategies of indigenization. However, we have said in the new constitution, we are very clear in the new constitution, property is going to be protected. Persons are protected, investments are protected now by the constitution. Before we go to the law, we have these things now protected by the constitution, which is now our political glue, which is now our economic glue, our social glue, and our cultural glue, and the glue for all the people of Zimbabweans across board, across political parties, across class. So we agreed that we can't go back to 2008. Mm-hmm. No one would want to go back to 2008 because the laws which were implemented in 2008 brought economic downturn, the real recession. But we can't go back there.
But I think, you make an eloquent case for why you need to look forward, that you were saying you can't look in rearview mirrors, you need to look at what is ahead. But how confident are you, given the fact that we're not sure what the outcome of the election would be, that whoever comes in, let's for example say MDC loses the election and ZANU-PF wins, how confident are you that ZANU-PF will actually respect that constitution and uphold the kind of guarantees that have been built into that constitution that will give investors confidence that their investments will in fact be safe?
Let me assure you, I am unapologetically optimistic about the future of Zimbabwe. Very, very clear about the future of Zimbabwe. I cannot speak on behalf of other political parties, but I'm speaking on behalf of government. Mm-hmm. I expect the new government of Zimbabwe to respect the rule of law, to respect the norms and values of the new constitution. And if those are respected, we shall have a new Zimbabwe. We shall have a new beginning. We shall have a Zimbabwe that is going to respect first its own constitution. If you respect the constitution, you have already respected the property rights. So I am very, very optimistic about it. Of course, I cannot speak on behalf of the other political parties.
Now, Mr. Moyo, let's turn our attention to the kind of reception that you've received from international business and certainly business in South Africa. You've been addressing a range of people. What are the, the feedback that you're getting from your drive to kind of ramp up investment and an injection into your economy?
I'm very excited by the reception that I got from the Nedbank NEPAD forum this morning. The people there, the investors there, are now itching to come to Zimbabwe to see for themselves. Some were standing up to give testimonies about the recent developments in the country. So we are very, very much happy, and we have now established contacts with a number of investors who will come to our state enterprises. And by the way, within the state enterprises sector, we actually have 100% ownership by government now, and government is saying let's reduce from 100%, let's give out some shareholdings to others, because we have said it is no use to own 100% of a rat as compared to owning 10% of an elephant. We have 78 parastatals in Zimbabwe. In fact, we have got 78 rats, which we have. We can't continue to have 78 rats. Let's have 10% of elephants. And that is why we are reducing from 100% to whatever percentage that we can give. You would know that we partially privatized our steel company. And in our privatization of Zisco Steel, we gave over 50% to an investor. And the government remained with slightly above 30% and 10% going to the communities. So you can see that the privatization that we are carrying out within the state enterprises is actually a reverse of indigenization. While this indigenization is going that direction, we are reducing the ownership by government in the state enterprises. And state enterprises are indigenous because they're owned by government, but we are reducing.
Mr. Moyo, I can understand your enthusiasm for bringing in private capital and investment into Zimbabwe, but economic growth doesn't automatically equate economic development, particularly amongst the most marginal, amongst the poor. How are you going to ensure that the way in which you bring investment into the country is not just going to be about profit, and it's not just going to be about economic growth without ensuring that there's long-term sustainability and addressing issues of inequality and poverty in Zimbabwe?
I totally agree with you. We are not naive that economic growth will automatically lead to economic development. We are not naive. We know of growth without jobs. We know that. We know of growth without development and without transformation. And that is why as government, we are investing in education. And you would know that Zimbabwe is the best country in terms of churning out expertise from our universities, from our colleges, from our tertiary institutions, and a number of institutions across Africa, including South Africa. You have Zimbabweans as top-notch guys running those institutions. So we are not naive. We are working on the social side to make sure that the poor people, the marginalized people, and that is why we need to get empowerment right. We need to get that empowerment right. Instead of benefiting the rich, it has to benefit the ordinary people.
We have to leave it there, Mr. Moyo. Thank you so much for coming through to us here in the studio. That was, of course, Zimbabwean State Enterprise and Parastatal Minister Gorden Moyo telling us how his country is ready to engage with and is ripe for investors.